I will be moderating tonight's webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your precious evening to join us for this talk. Let thy food be thy medicine, understanding our constitution and how to turn what we eat into medicine, which I am personally very excited to learn about. So before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to share with you. Just to let you know, throughout the presentation, there will be opportunities to take questions during the Q&A breaks. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box, which you can access by clicking on the speech balloon icon located at the top right-hand corner of your screen. So you have the option of addressing an open question in the chat box that everyone can read, or if you feel more comfortable remaining anonymous, you can address the question to the organizer, the very first organizer on that list, which is me, which that will come up directly to me privately, and then I can just ask it as a general question, okay? Also, throughout the presentation, everyone's mic will be muted to allow for a smoother flow, so we'll have less background distractions. Should you wish to ask a live question, which we welcome, either on or off camera during the Q&A, please let me know in the chat box and I will unmute you so that we can all hear you, okay? So, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to tonight's speaker. Chang Royce Liu is one of the TCM practitioners and acupuncturists at My Complete Balance. He graduated from the University of Toronto with a bachelor degree in human biology and cell stem system biology. With the desire to bridge his knowledge in Western medical science and traditional Chinese medicine, he completed a doctoral program in Oriental medicine at the Toronto School of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Royce's treatment focus is on internal medicine, infertility, and weight loss. He has gone on to receive additional trainings in tongue-style acupuncture, Zhu's scalp acupuncture, and classic traditional Chinese medicine acupuncture, which has proven to be more effective clinically. So without further ado, I am going to mute myself and pass this over to Royce. So over to you, Royce.
All right. Thank you, Roz. And welcome, everybody. All right. How are you guys doing? Let me first share my screen with everybody. And, okay, so you guys can comment in the chat box if you guys are hearing me okay. Am I too loud? Am I too quiet? Do you want me to adjust the sound, or things are pretty good currently? Okay. Good. And can everybody see the screen? So far, we haven't had anybody complain about it, so I guess, okay, good. That's great. All right. And okay, so first of all, welcome. And thank you all for joining us today. So please feel free, just like Ross said, please feel free to write any questions on the chat bar through the webinar, and we will have time for dedicated time to openly answer those questions. And if you are feeling uncomfortable, and you can always message us directly, so we can answer them either in private or later on during the webinar. All right, so let's get down to our main topic today, which are the Constitution and foods. So before we start, I have a question for all of you. This may sound a little bit gross, but have you all ever looked at your bowel movement before? Or do you just go into the washroom and then once it's out, and then you never take a look at it and then you're out of the washroom? And this is a very important question in Chinese medicine because bowel movement actually is a really good reflection of how our internal organs are doing. So here are a stool chart actually Oh, hello? Oh, okay. So are are you able to describe or identify your stool from the chart? And if you've never taken a look at your bowel before, then are you able to guess which one between the all seven types are the healthier type or the normal type for a person? Let me see some answers. Okay, so we have the type 1, which is like a little bit like separated hard lumps. And we have sausage type for type 2, sausage shape, but then with some cracks on the bowel for type 3. Okay, we're seeing a lot of 4s coming in. So it's the sausage or snake-like smooth and soft type of bowel. So that's really good. And we also have the 3 types down below. So this is just a very quick test or a quiz that you can look at it and then know which one is actually the normal type. So with people who are having type 4, congratulations, this is actually the normal and a healthier bowel movement. And type 3 is also a really good healthy type. Type 1 and type 2 is closely to a little bit more constipation. And 5 to 7 are mainly towards the soft stool and loose stool or a little bit diarrhea, watery stool. So if you never taken a look into your bowel movement, today is a good day to start. Note this chart down or just search this Bristol stool chart. Note, search it on Google and then do a little quiz or little test on a daily basis to see how your internal organs are doing. All right, without further ado, we will start. Okay, so before we talk about all the different types of constitution, we have to understand what exactly is constitution. So constitution are individual's body condition, and it can come from two sources. So first one, just like the genes, are inherited from our parents. And the second type is actually the acquired factor, which includes diet, includes the environment, includes our lifestyle, even includes our emotions. So all of these factors combined together, they shape us and they affect us structurally, physiologically, and psychologically too. So why is constitution important? Like why do I emphasize it so much? Why is it today's headline, the topic of the webinar? Because constitution is actually the sorry. Let me go back. Oh, hold on a second. Technical difficulty here. Didn't seem to let me go. Oh, I think the website crashed. Just let me quickly set it up again. Sorry about that. Okay, it's loading right now. So back to the topic. Why is Constitution so important? Let me get to the slide first. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Constitution is the foundation of traditional Chinese medicine, and it can be used for a lot of different types of stuff. So first is diagnosis. We use Constitution and the internal condition a lot for our diagnosis for our treatment, and even for disease prevention. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we are very specific and personalized. So it is each diagnosis, each treatment are very tailored to each individuals. So the one size fits all theory, it doesn't work in traditional Chinese medicine. It's just like your shoe and my shoe are totally different in size. And it doesn't work that like, oh, I can wear your shoe and still walk comfortably. And it doesn't work in Chinese medicine either. In Western medicine, the treatments are a little bit more generalized. So for example, for you and I both having headaches, when we visit the doctor, we could both be given painkillers. But if we go to see a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, my headache could be caused by my liver. Your headache could be caused for example, sinus issues. Then our treatment and our diagnosis are going to be very different between us. So that's why like it is very important. And also a very interesting fact about Chinese medicine is actually it targets the root cause. So just as the example that we talked about, like your headache is caused by the sinus issues. If the sinus is never being addressed, the painkiller can help with helping you through the day with the severe headache. But if the sinus never get addressed, will the headache come back? It eventually will. So that's why it's really important to actually target the root cause before treating anything else, so that we can make sure that the symptoms never come back. And this is actually a big part of like how Chinese medicine are really good in terms of disease prevention too. Okay, so another example is, for example, the nature of food. The nature of food that we're going to cover later in the second part of the section. So, for example, during winter time, the coldness in the environment are very severe. Just like Toronto, sometimes we can get down to -30 degrees, or with plus the wind chill, sometimes even -40. So the cold can easily invade into our body and actually cause problems. But after knowing like Chinese medicine, for example, when my family does during wintertime is we actually prepare lamb broth or chicken broth. And these two are very warm in nature. It can help the body to warm up and actually expel the coldness away from the body. So that's why like it's really important to first to understand your constitution, and then being able to really apply into real life. Okay, so there are 9 types of different constitution. I know this looks a little bit overwhelming with like, oh, a lot of new terms, for example, like qi or yang or yin or flam. These are like new words that you rarely see them before, but don't worry, we will be going through them each one by one. But before explaining everything about them, I want you guys to be focused on what are the symptoms of each type of constitution, because during this time, I want you to, when I'm presenting, I want you to also self-diagnose, seeing at the symptoms and knowing which one correlates or which one matches you the most. And at the end of this section, I want you to be able to tell me at least, I think I'm maybe which type, for example, the qi deficiency type or the phlegm dam accumulation type. So being able to self-diagnose is very important. Okay, all right, let's go. So the first type we're going to talk about is the neutral type. So the neutral type, they usually have very strong physique. They are stable in their emotional state. They sleep well, they eat well, they have great appetite, they're quite energetic, they don't get tired very easily, and they have normal and regular bowel movements. They're very adaptable to environmental changes. So for example, if the temperature all of a sudden drops like 2 degrees, it wouldn't affect them as much. And here I would like to actually emphasize one word, which is the word normal, because through my clinical experience, I've noticed that everybody's norm are quite different. For example, when I was having a consultation with one of my clients, when I asked them, oh, how their bowel movements be, and they always answer, oh yeah, they're great, they're normal. But when I dig a little bit deeper, I start noticing like, oh, their bowel movement actually happen once every week, which is not normal for everybody. But this symptoms is actually quite normal for them because they've been experiencing this throughout their whole entire life. Since childbirth, they've been having bowel movement only once a week. So the concept of norm is very different between all of us. And another great example is actually, for example, menstrual cramps or menstrual pain. I've been speaking with a lot of ladies who come in for menstruation or coming from other issues. And whenever I ask how their menstruations, they're like, oh, yeah, they're great. They're pretty normal. But then they have to take 2 Tylenols on day 1 and day 2 to be able to survive through that time period because the cramping and the pain is just so severe, so strong. So this is actually not a normal thing. A normal person can feel a little bit of cramps, but not necessarily to a point that you have to start taking painkillers. So this is actually not a normal body reaction. That already indicates there are imbalances in the internal organs. And some other examples of norm, for example, normal people, after they eat a meal, they shouldn't be feeling tired. They shouldn't be feeling drained. They shouldn't be feeling like, oh, I have to lay down, I have to take a nap after they ate. And for example, menopause. Menopause symptoms are quite common between females, but the symptoms, the severity of the symptoms should not be bothersome. For example, night sweats. For example, the hot flushes. And these shouldn't be as bothersome or affect their daily routine. Even though this is a time period that there's a lot of hormonal changes in the body, but the severity definitely should not be bothered them at all. Okay. So the next type we're going to talk about is the qi deficient type. So before talking about it specifically, qi is the description of the energy in traditional Chinese medicine. So qi is the vital force or is the energy for the body. And qi combined with blood, it makes up the essential component of the makes up the essential component for our body's daily routine. And when qi is deficient, our internal organs cannot perform its own function because that's the fuel, that's the energy that is running. So for qi deficiency type people, they may feel low energy. They may have like a low fatigue. They may have digestive issues. They may have shortness of breath. They may have sweating spontaneously or profusely, or even they can catch cold easily. They have low immune system and low immune response. And the next type is blood deficient. Blood deficient is actually not listed in the 9 classical constitution type, but I've seen a lot of blood deficient patient because their body, especially ladies, because during menstruation they lose a lot of blood and they never know how or when to replenish these blood. So eventually they will start building up like the blood deficiency constitution inside with their internal organs. So for example, when you see these symptoms, these are all due to there's not enough blood supplies to corresponding area, like lightheadedness, there's not enough blood supply to the brain. Floaters, there's not enough blood supplies to the eyes, or numbness, tingling in extremities. The blood supply is cut off, or there's just not enough to go through the extremities, so causing numbness or tingling in the fingertips. And fatigue, insomnia, poor memory are also some common symptoms that these type of person will usually encounter. So the next two are yang and yin deficiency. Right now, I'm not gonna spend the time to explain what yang and yin means. I will explain that in part 2. I just want you to focus on the symptoms. I want you to be able to really diagnose or see which category or which constitution type you fall in. So first, we talk about the yang deficient type, which is there's a lot of cold signs. For example, their hands and feet are really cold. Their body are quite cold. They feel the cold are coming from within, and they have low metabolism. They feel quite sleepy. They're tired very easily, or they may have a water retention going on, especially in the lower limb, or they can have like a diarrhea or loose stool that are easily affecting them. And on the other hand, in deficiency, these type of person will have a lot of heat signs. So for example, their palm and their soles may be feeling very warm, very hot. They could have insomnia. They could have like a lot of dreams when they're during their sleep. They could have night sweats during their sleep. And because of the excessive heat building up in the body, it dries up the body fluid. So they can encounter some dryness, for example, dryness in the mouth, dryness in the lips, or dryness in the bowel movement, which cause them to have constipation issues, or dryness on their skin, or their emotion can be quite irritable because their body is constantly in this like hot, heated environment. Okay, and the next one is damp and phlegm accumulation. So these type of person are generally, they will have heaviness in their body. They have trouble waking up in the morning. They have to wake up, they get up, but then their bodies still feel really heavy, feel very tired. They're not rested at all. And sometimes they can have headaches, the feeling that like there's pressure, like a band just around their head, and it's like a dull, achy kind of feeling, and it's really troublesome. And they couldn't really get any, even sometimes with painkiller, it doesn't really help them. They could also have digestive issues based on the location of the dampness and phlegm accumulation. It could actually have different manifestation. So, for example, when a person have excessive dampness accumulate in their respiratory tract, they tend to have cough. They tend to have like phlegm lodge in their throat, or like wet cough that are really hard, or like very phlegmy. And whenever the damp is accumulated in their digestive system, they tend to feel bloated easily. They tend to have like, oh, whenever they eat, they feel tired. And it could also happen in joints too. So, for example, arthritis. People with arthritis have their joint a little bit swelling, and then it also has the characteristic of like resonating with the environment. Whenever on a rainy day or a dampy day, their joint hurts a little bit more compared to like a sunny or a dry day. These are also example of dampness and phlegm accumulating inside the joints. Next is damp heat. So damp heat is actually caused by two different factors combined into one. So just like the one that we talked about before, dampness, there's excessive amount of dampness combining together with excessive heat in the body. So a person will feel heaviness in the body, they will feel fatigued, they'll feel tired, and acne, a lot of acne happening on the face, their upper shoulder, upper back, or they could have skin issues such as psoriasis or eczema. These are all common signs that a person is having damp heat accumulated in the body. Okay, and the next one would be chi stagnation. So chi stagnation are in general, just like the name implies, are energy that is not moving. So people tend to feel emotional, and they could have anxiety, they could have depression, they could feel easily stressed out, they could feel irritable, they can also experience a headache and insomnia or frequently sighing. So the sighing is very interesting because it is actually a self-regulating mechanism that your body forces you to deep breath in and then breathe out. During this motion, it can actually get the energy moving again. So if you think like chi stagnation is a little bit hard to grasp, a little bit hard to understand, just imagine our body having the channels or meridians running through, and then these are lines where in channels or highways that our energy travels. And imagine during chi stagnation, or the Torontonians would understand, like it's like Highway 401 during rush hour. when you're backed in head to back and you know that you're not going anywhere for the next hour, you're just going to be sitting here inside the traffic, you will start feeling chi stagnation. And these chi stagnation symptoms will actually be very similar to how you feel, because in that case, the chi is probably stagnated when you're stuck in traffic jams too. Okay, all right. So this is the first part. So we're actually going to pause right here. And if you have any question regarding the different kinds of constitution, feel free to ask them in the chat box right now. Again, if you're feeling uncomfortable just posting them directly out, you can feel free to put it in the chat box, but then send it to only the moderators. So remember how I asked you to identify your own constitution, and this is a really good time to let us know if you're able to do so. If you have any other question, feel free to ask right now. And I want to emphasize that I understand it's really hard to really pinpoint down to one specific type, because in reality, we often have different combinations of our constitution. For example, insufficiency could be combined with dampness and heat together, or the excessive dampness accumulation could be combined with qi deficiency at the same time. So it's really hard to categorize yourself into one specific one, but just try your best and let us know if you're able to kind of grasp an idea of, okay, which one am I more geared towards to. Okay.
So Royce, we have a couple of questions here. I don't know if you can see them in the chat box. The first one is, can you have a mix of constitution types?
Yes, you can. So just like I said, you can have different combination of different types of constitution having a combination together happening in the body, but usually one will be still more dominant than the other.
Okay. Excellent. Next question. What is the major cause of yang deficiency, as I am cold all the time?
So yang deficiency, we will actually discuss a little more about it. So stay tuned for a second part, then I will explain what does yang deficiency actually mean and what could be the cause of it as well.
Excellent. How about dry mouth at night? What qi is not working to cause that?
So usually dryness at night is how we describe the insufficiency. When I talk about the constitution, about the insufficiency type, you notice there's a lot of dry signs. There is some heat building up in the body, and that we could right now we can think maybe you're insufficient, but we cannot be absolutely sure, just because there could be a lot of factors that's causing you to have dry mouth actually. For example, some people sleep with their mouth open, and that exchange of air will actually dry out the mouth. So you may feel dryness at night. So it's not necessarily insufficiency, but right now we can assume that it is.
Okay, great. So would strong migraines also fall under that qi stagnation type?
Yes. So strong migraines are usually happening on the temporal region, which is on the side of the head, or it could happen on both sides. It could happen on single side. Usually these are caused by qi stagnation. The qi are not moving in these meridians, these channels in here, causing friction to form and causing pain to happen in this specific region.
Can I ask a question, the follow-up question to that, Roy? So how would you, if you were at home and you were experiencing that, what is it that you can do to, shift that a little bit?
So right now, because migraine itself is a symptom that can be quite complicated. So there could be a lot of different causes. Qi stagnation can be the cause, but then we need to look at also the root cause. Is it because there are, for example, underlying blood deficiency that is causing not enough blood to rush to the specific area, causing migraine? Or is it because there's not enough qi deficiency that's causing the qi to unable to go to that area? So right with migraine alone, just as one symptom, it's really hard to define as like, is it caused by, for example, qi deficiency or qi stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
But a general rule of thumb, if it is qi stagnation, movement is it will be really helpful. For example, light exercises or light stretches. You want to start moving your body and start get the energy to flow more smoothly, can actually help to relieve with the symptoms. But there are cases that for example, the example that I mentioned, the headache or migraine that is actually caused by deficiency. And that alone, if you start moving the body because you're using up energy to move, that can actually cause the migraine to be more severe. So it's really hard to say which one is it just by one symptom alone, that we have to look at it a more holistically.
Great, thank you. So are there any more questions at this point? I don't see any more in the chat box, but let's see if any more come in.
I see that one says like frequently feeling thirsty. I just want to quickly address that. It could be caused by yin deficient because there's excessive heat building up, but it's not necessarily have to be that. So just by one symptom alone, just like I said, one symptom alone is really hard to grasp the whole picture. So if you really want to understand like, oh, how is your constitution, the best way is actually to see a TCM practitioner to be able to understand your underlying condition. Because like I said, there are a lot of times that different constitution types can actually combine and form into one. So the best way to really understand it is to speak with a professional.
Excellent. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions for right now. So we'll probably move on. Please feel free to put questions in as we go along, because I am recording them and we will do our best to cover them. Okay, so I'm going to head it over back to you, Royce.
Great. Thank you, Roz. Okay, so now that we have a general idea of how what our constitution is, now the question comes down to what can we do about that information, or like how can we help ourselves in terms of that. So the important thing we're going to talk about today is medicated diet. So our body, there's a saying that we are what we eat, and this is very important because we spend a lot of time eating. For a normal person, we eat 3 meals a day, so our digestive system is always like having food, and then they have to process the food. So eating is a really big part, and medicated diet can help you guide your body towards the right direction. And right now, after understanding our constitution, at least I want you to understand, and I don't want you to cause your body into further damage. Okay, so first thing, here is the 5-element chart that shows the direct relationship between each 5 element and also the corresponding taste and to the corresponding specific organs. So for example, on the top here, we have the bitter taste. The bitter taste that goes into the heart. And the next one on the right, we have sweet. So sweet tastes are the dominant taste for the digestive functions, so which are the stomach and the spleen organs. So the sweet tastes are the energy whenever we eat sweets. This is the energy that we send directly to our stomach and spleen. But when I talk about sweets, don't think this is, for example, then, oh, in that case, I will eat a lot of chocolates, I will eat a lot of cakes, I will drink a lot of bubble tea, for example, because sweets, when we talk about, this is not talking about artificial sugar. And all the things that I listed, for example, the chocolate, the cookies, the cakes are all made up of artificial sugar. The sweet here is actually talking about natural source of sweetness. For example, rice. When you chew on rice for a long enough time, it will release the glucose. So rice is actually a good qi tonic, like a qi ingredients to help strengthen our digestive function. And for example, potatoes, like yams, these are naturally sweetened foods that can help strengthen our digestive function. And on the right hand bottom corner here, we have spicy. Spicy is actually not a correct word. Like the correct word should be pungent or aromatic, such as onions, scallion. These are not spicy, but they're quite pungent in nature. They're able to move stuff, and they are really good in terms of strengthening the lung functions. And for example, garlic, when we talk about garlic, a lot of them are, people say garlic are really good in boosting our immune response, immune system. That's the reason why, because garlic are more pungently aromatic, so it can strengthen our lungs. And the next one, we have salty. Salty like sea urchin, walnuts, seaweeds. These are all salty foods that can strengthen our kidneys. And then we also have the sour taste, which goes directly to our liver. And when we talk about food, each food in Chinese medicine are categorized and they are given their own energy or the nature of the foods. So right here you can see cold, cool, warm, and hot. When we're talking about these words, we're not talking about the temperature of the foods. We're talking about the nature of the foods. So for example, garlic, like I said before, ginger, lamb, these are tend to have a hot nature, so it warms up our body more. And for example, chicken, miso, onions, salmons, these are also warming. Comparing to hot, it's just not as strong, so it has a more warming nature. And on the other side, we have cooling. So for example, apples, avocados, celeries, mint, green tea. These type of food, whenever you eat them, it will actually help your body to cool down and clear away the heat from the body. And the last one is a little bit stronger types of food, which is the cold ones. So for example, banana, the bok choy, crabs, tofu. These are usually more cold in nature. And these nature are the specific energy that each individual ingredient carries. But through preparation, we can actually modify the nature of the food. For example, when we eat bok choy in my family, we usually stir fry it with ginger, and this will actually change the nature of the bok choy to being not as cold as how it's supposed to be, but then to a more neutral or more warming type of food. So next one is the meat's energy or the meat's nature. So in general, land animals are more warming. So for example, the cows or rabbits, these are more warming in nature. And the pork is actually more cooling. And for flying animals are more warming in general, with exception of duck. Sea animals, for example, salmon, for example, shrimps are also more warming, with the exception of crabs and clams. This may seem to be really hard to remember, like, oh, why is this one cold? Why is this one warm? A general rule of thumb is if this animal likes to move a lot or not. In general, most animals like to be moving. They like to be scouting around or moving around. So their meat are generally more on the warming side. But for example, pigs like to lay around. They don't like to move too much, so their meat are more cooling in nature. And for example, crabs or clams, they're really unable to move that much. So usually they're more still inside the water. So their meat are more cooling, with the exception of duck. I think this is due to the environment and also like the diet that the duck is having. So that's causing the nature of the duck meat to actually be more cooling or cold in nature. Okay, so like how we talked about before, the first one is the neutral type. So the neutral type, they should be having a well-balanced diet. So our body is always in homeostasis. And this means that our body will self-regulate itself. So for example, when you eat a spicy food, does that mean my constitution go directly into like damp heat type or yin deficiency type? No, because our body is able to regulate and then pull our body's constitution back to normal or back to how it's supposed to be or spend the longest time of. And this, whenever, for example, when we eat food, it causes a disruption. And give it some time, it's able to pull back to normal. But if you continuously, for example, if I have spicy food on a daily basis, I kept eating like McDonald's, a lot of greasy foods, it can eventually pull your body towards the more damp heat or like more insufficiency type because I'm continuously dragging my body towards that direction. So eventually the heat will start building up and it will cause imbalance and cause problem or damages later on the road. But not everybody are born neutral. Some people can be born with Qi deficiency. In that case, your body is also in homeostasis. So you need to continuously work to pull your body towards the neutral direction. It doesn't mean that, oh, after having one meal of like very, for example, foods that tonifies qi, then that means my constitution is already in the um, neutral type. It's still in the Qi deficiency type. It doesn't change like day and night. So it is a continuously a long process that you have to force your body into. And eventually you will start noticing your symptoms have changed. For example, you don't feel as tired. Your digestive system is actually getting stronger, etc. And the first one we talk about is the Qi deficient. So having in tonic, Qi tonic food and food that can strengthen our spleen and stomach are going to be really beneficial for these type of person. So for example, rice that I talked about, Chinese yam, which is on the top right corner there, and potato, these root vegetables are actually very abundant in terms of its energy. So eating them, it actually strengthens our spleen and stomach, and it strengthens our own qi. And also chicken broth, congee, these are some example of food that is really good and that can strengthen our qi. So now when I talk about stomach, an analogy that I often talk to my patient is imagine our stomach being a cooking pot, and the firepower, the stove that we use is actually using our own energy. So once we eat food, it goes into our stomach, goes into the cooking pot, and we use our own energy to prepare it. We use the own energy to be able to cook it and then rotten it and then extract nutrients from it. But whenever you eat oily or greasy food, you will actually cause more stress to the pot. Just like how, for example, when you're cooking a broth, when it's boiling already, all of a sudden you add stuff into it or you add like cold water into it, it will stop boiling. It's the same idea. Whenever you eat cold, oily, greasy, sweet foods, this gives the body more stress and the firepower will actually be not enough to cook the food for you. So the food will actually sit in your stomach and the person may feel bloated or feel a little bit like nauseated because the food is just sitting there. It's not going anywhere. It's not being properly digested. And useful and interesting application of the nature of the food is actually a Japanese restaurant. So after you order every dish in a Japanese restaurant, can anybody answer what item do they bring up first? Anybody? Okay, so usually the first item that they bring in a Japanese restaurant is miso soup, because when you order, for example, sushi or sashimi, these ones are a little bit more cold, and they want to prepare our stomach before having anything else. So first thing with the miso soup, miso, like the just like how the fruit nature chart there is actually warm in nature. So the miso soup can help warm our stomach up, kind of like give the stomach a wake up call to prepare it for the cold and raw fish that is going to come later in a bit. And also, when the fish comes, when our sashimi and sushi comes, there are a couple ingredients on the plate that can help us. So, for example, the ginger combining with the wasabi. Ginger and wasabi are both warming in nature, and they often are presented alongside with the sushi and sashimi, is because they want not only they want to prepare our stomach before, but during the process of eating this raw fish, they also want to not create too much coldness in our stomach. And I don't know if anybody know or not. There is this. Can anybody see my red dot here? So this leaf right here on the top left corner, right above tuna, this is actually called perilla leaf. So I don't know if you guys ever saw this on the dish before or you guys ever ate it. This is actually edible. And perilla leaf combining with ginger, they both have the function of warming our stomach, so preventing the stomach to cramp up due to coldness. And also another function is they combine together is really good for seafood poisoning. So it is very interesting for me that when I learn about these information, the plating, it actually makes sense. It's not just because, oh, the perilla leaf looks good or the ginger, it looks good to be placed there. There's actually meaning, and there's actually it's designed to be that way. Okay, so next, when we talk about qi deficiency, one herbs that I want to talk about is huang qi. So huang qi is a herb that is sweet in taste. So sweet, we remember whenever it's sweet, it goes to our stomach and our spleen. It is slightly warm in nature. It enters the lung and the spleen meridian. So the function of it is to tonify qi. So because of its function in tonifying qi, strengthening our energy, and it enters the lung and the spleen channel, so it is a really good herb in terms of strengthening our digestive function and also strengthening our immune system to prevent us from getting catching cold that easily. So a good way to take huang qi is actually to prepare huang qi tea. So just have a couple slices, put it in boiling water, and then just drink the water like how you drink a tea. And next, we're going to talk about the yin and yang deficient. But before, we have to explain like what is yin and yang. So I'm sure most people have seen the symbol before. This is the Tai Chi symbol, which indicates the yin and yang. The yin is the black part, and the yang is the white part, and they are in perfect balance. So then they are creating harmony to prevent any damages that is happening in our internal organs. Yin and yang may be hard, the concept may be hard to grasp, but here is an example of what it means. So for example, the yang part is the fire and the yin part is water. So when in ancient time, they are very figurative when they're describing these concepts because they want everybody to really understand. So then everybody can use this kind of knowledge. So the fire and the water needs to be in perfect balance to prevent things to prevent our internal organs to go wrong or cause imbalances and then causing damages. So for example, when we talk about yin deficiency, that means the water part is actually more deficient. So we have lesser water comparing to the fire. So when we have less water, we cannot control the fire, so fire will be more dominant. That's why when we talk about the symptoms of yin deficient people, there are a lot of dry sign, there's a lot of heat sign, is because the water is unable to control the fire. So fire become more dominant. The fire will start causing damages to the body and causing us to have, for example, night sweats. For example, waking up in the middle of the night or causing heat signs, red faces. And on the other hand, yang deficiency means there's not enough energy, not enough firepower in the body. So there's too much water that can be covering the fire, causing the body to be cold because there's not enough fire to warm our body up. So our body can feel, for example, like the symptoms that we talk about, cold hand, cold feet, or even there's too much water accumulation causing edema in the lower limbs or causing diarrhea because it's all because there's too much water or accumulation in the body. Okay, so now that we explained what yin and yang is, we can go into what to do for a yang deficiency type person. So definitely for yang deficiency type, you need to avoid cold raw food, just like we talked about iced beverages, sashimi, salads, because when our stomach and our system is already yang deficient, we don't want to add more coldness or more these raw food that our body actually need to spend the energy to help cook and prepare for you. You want to give it well-cooked vegetables. You want to give it some warming, more tonifying food for the body. So an example is, for example, on the right side is this is the chicken broth on the top left, top corner there, and then the lamb stew on the right, and then cinnamon. So cinnamon is actually a really good herbs. It's also used in herbal formulas as well. It's really good in terms of strengthening our yang's energy and give warming our body up. And one drink that a person can be having is actually ginseng tea. So in the Western view, ginseng is really good for boosting the immune system, increasing our energy level, lower our blood sugar, benefiting the brain function, improving our libido. In Chinese medicine, we say ginseng has the function of tonifying qi, like just like the spin qi and the lung qi. So it's pretty much like huang qi. The function are quite similar, but it take it up a notch. It's not only tonifying qi, it actually tonifies yang. So it adds more firepower to the body. So at the same time, it's more, it can be nourishing yin as well and generating more body fluids. But I want to be very clear here. Like when I recommend the ginseng tea for a yang deficiency type person, I don't want you to see only one symptom. For example, you see, oh, it tonifies yang, or you see, oh, it boosts immune system. And then you go out there and then start buying excessive amount of ginseng tea and then drink it on a daily basis, because that will actually create problem if your constitution is not only yang deficient. For example, if it's combining with other like damp heat, or you are both yin and yang deficient. When you're drinking excessive amount of ginseng tea, this will actually cause further damage. And that's definitely something that I want you guys to be avoiding. Okay, so for next is the yin deficiency type. So yin deficiency type, like we said before, there's a lot of heat signs already present in the body. So definitely you want to avoid spicy food and warm or hot foods in general. So like the garlic, like spices, lamb stew, cinnamon, these are some foods that you definitely want to avoid to prevent it further drying up your body fluid. And something that could be really helpful is, for example, some nourishing foods like sesame, like honey, like pear, like apple, and also at the same time pair it with heat clearing foods such as tofu, like green beans, celery, watermelons. These foods can actually help you to clear the excessive heat away and to replenish your body fluid up. And one drink that is really good for a yin deficiency type person is chrysanthemum tea. So chrysanthemum and goji berry together, it has the nature of pungent, sweet, bitter, and goji is more sweet in nature. And when it's combined both together, chrysanthemum can help clear the excessive heat away, and the goji berry can help nourish the body fluids. So this is actually a very good drink for people who sit in the office and work in front of a computer a lot. Because if you see the last function of both of them, one is calm liver and benefits eyes, the other is benefits Ching and brighten eyes. So both of them can actually nourish your eyes, and for especially for people who are experiencing like a dryness in the eyes, their eyes are get tired, fatigue easily, or they have like whenever a wind blow onto their eyes, they tend to tear up very easily. These chrysanthemum tea are really good to help replenish the body fluids and the blood to nourish the eyes. Okay, next is damp and phlegm type. So damp and phlegm type, we have to avoid foods such as fried food, greasy, sweets, eating too much, too full, spicy, cold foods. The list goes on a lot. So when we talk about the deficiency type, for example, Qi deficiency, Yang deficient, Yin deficient, these are all deficient type. So that means our body is actually lacking specific component, either lacking in Qi, either lacking in Yang or Yin. And when we talk about damp phlegm and then damp heat type, Qi stagnation, these means that the body is excessive of something. So for damp and phlegm type, these indicate that there are too much dampness that is accumulating in the body. So when we're having our diet or a medicated diet or we're doing our lifestyle, we should definitely avoid eating too much because our body is already in stress because of so much dampness is in the body already. So we want to prevent overloading. The organ that is responsible for dealing with dampness is actually spleen. So imagine spleen just as a like overwork worker. They're like it's already 9 p.m. They're still working. They're sitting in front of a computer. They're very drained, but then they haven't finished working. And right beside them, they have a pile of documents that they still need to go through. That's pretty much how that image is pretty much how spleen looks like when there's too much damp and phlegm to deal with. So when the spleen is unable to deal with all the dampness, it will pile up and then it can cause problems. And you definitely want to avoid giving the spleen more work. So try to avoid eating too much. And one thing that can be very helpful is actually going on fast. So either intermittent fasting or just normal fasting can be very helpful. I don't know how many people attended the webinar that Laura hosted last week. She talked about having intermittent fasting and can be very beneficial for our digestive function. And this is the exact reason why. Because when our spleen and our digestive function are already overloaded, you don't want to give it more work. You want to space out every meal and eat at a certain period of time to give the body and give the spleen and stomach some time to rest. So some foods to be having for damp phlegm type is the lotus seed, the cork seed, and Chinese yam. So all these foods are really good in strengthening our spleen's function to deal with the dampness, and also really good in dealing and resolving the excessive dampness. So there are three methods that we can clear the dampness away. So first one is actually through sweating. Sweating is the easiest way that can get rid of the excessive dampness and then the water accumulating in the body away from from the body. Secondly is through urination, and third is through bowel movement. So if you ever do have problem with urination or bowel movement, you definitely need to be more careful because damp and phlegm, these wastes can easily accumulate, start piling up in the body. And the reason why we want to avoid like these fried food, greasy food is because they are harder to process and they give more stress for our stomach and spleen. So when we eat these fried food and greasy food because of its nature, it could create more dampness at the end. And the reason to avoid the spicy food is we don't want the dampness to combine with excessive heat and shift your constitution to a more damp heat type of constitution. So the cork seed, which are also known as job seed, they are actually a close relative to barley, but then their property are a little bit different. So cork seed or job seed, they are sweet in general, so that means it goes into the stomach spleen. They are slightly cooling, so it's really beneficial for the stomach if there are heat present in the body too. it enters the spleen, stomach, lung meridian. It can help promote urination and help resolve dampness. So these are the two main functions that makes jobs here such a strong herbs or foods, because at the same time it can strengthen spleen and it can promote urination to help you pee out the excessive dampness that's accumulated. And the following is damp heat. So damp heat are just like dampness. They can we can eat, for example, quick seed or a lotus seed to help deal with dampness. And then the next part is we need to eat foods that can clear heat. So definitely a large amount of vegetable can help. But remember, these vegetables needs to be well cooked. It's not salads, because salads could be causing more problem. Your body could actually spend more energy to help cook the salads for you. So definitely eat well and cooked vegetables. And also, for example, tofu, watermelon, these are all foods that can help clear the excessive heat away. And with this type of constitution, you want to avoid having spicy food, warming foods, and greasy sweets. So, and just like how we talk about spicy, warming food, this adds heat to the body. When you're damp heat in constitution, there's already so much heat in the body. You don't want to be adding more. You want to be clearing the heat away. So I didn't include a ingredient or a food or a tea that is good for damp heat, because damp heat are quite complicated and it can be really hard to deal with. When it's lodged in different locations, just like dampness, it could manifest differently. So for example, when it's in the intestines, it can cause diarrhea, and this requires specific herbs or specific treatment to be able to deal with. When it's locked in, for example, in your stomach, it can cause you to have a bloating issue or acid reflux. And these require different, so every type actually requires different treatments. So that's why I didn't want to give you guys a general or a very specific herbs or a specific food that can really help deal with. And the last one is chi stagnation. So chi stagnation person, just like we talk about, is having like headache, migraines, or emotional issues. These type of person, when we say something that is really good for them, is actually exercising. So because exercising can promote the movement of the energy in the body. So that's why like having exercise is such an important, regular exercise is such an important thing. And also if you're really physically unable to do exercise, or your body needs a extra push, so having pungent or aromatic foods that can actually help. So for example, garlic, leeks, onions, and chrysanthemum, or even drink a little bit of red wine. These can help the movement and help the energy to move more smoothly in the body. But definitely you need to avoid over drinking. So when I say drink red wine, it doesn't mean like, okay, the Royce said I should be drinking wine, so I will be drinking 3 wine a day, or 3 wine every meal, or drink on a daily basis, because that will actually overdo it. And usually alcohol are damp heat in nature, so it will cause more problem. So when I say likely, so maybe once every week or once or twice every week, and have a little alcohol can actually help move everything in the body. One drink that is really good for chi stagnation person is mint tea. So mint, as you see here, the taste is actually acrid and aromatic. Again, it can help move the energy in the body. It is also cooling, so it can help prevent the chi stagnation to eventually start turning into heat. Because when things are stagnated, it will cause friction in the body, and that friction will slowly generate heat. So whenever a person is having chi stagnation and they never really thought about dealing with it, eventually it will start turning into heat building up in the body at the same time. So that's why mint tea, the cooling nature of it is actually really good. And it enters the lung, the liver meridian, it soothes the liver. That's the key point there, because liver is the organ that is responsible for the movement or the free flow of energy. Whenever the liver is affected, our energy tend to be stagnated. So mint tea, the function, the fact that it goes into the liver meridian and then the function is to soothe liver, actually helps our body to get the energy moving. All right. So in conclusion, there are some takeaways that I want you to learn from today's webinar. First thing first is understanding our own constitution. Between all those types, I want you to understand like, oh, why is it important that constitution is affect us so much. Constitution is the exact reason why something can be helpful for others, but it cannot be helpful for you just because everybody's constitution is slightly different. So maybe it fits another person perfectly, but for you, it can actually cause more harm. So understanding your own constitution and being able to apply it on, for example, choosing the right food, at least avoiding the food that can cause your body to go into further damage. And next is one size fits all does not work in Chinese medicine or in general. It doesn't work for our body because everybody's is so different. So just like I said before, one thing could be working for them, but the other thing could not be working for you. And last one is actually a sentence that I really like, and I feel like it sums up the traditional Chinese medicine theory very well, which is in Mandarin it says 病之当服，父子大黄砒霜皆是珍珠；病之不妥服，参其不容，枸杞都是砒霜。This sentence is by Zheng Qing'an, a Qing dynasty TCM practitioner. So the direct translation is when your body is facing issue and when it's taking in the right moment, 附子大黄 and 砒霜 is arsenic. These are herbs that are usually a little bit toxic. These can be helping your body when it's taking at the right moment, and they can be as precious as pearls. But when your body is not in the right condition, and you take ginseng or take huangqi or take lurong is the deer antlers, and goqi. These are all tonic food that are said to be very strong in terms of like their tonifying function. If your body is not suitable to take these foods, whenever you take them, they could be as toxic as arsenic. So I think this really well summarized like choosing the correct food and understanding your own constitution is very important, and not just going blindly out there when my friends say, oh, turmeric is good, or specific berries are really good, and then you go out and blindly just take lots of them. All right, so that would be the conclusion. Thank you all for listening. And right now, any questions so far?
So Royce, I do have a question that came up here. And the question is, hang on a second here. What types of food or tea would you recommend for damp heat constitution with acne and fatigue symptoms?
Mm-hmm. So the reason why I don't want to include in here, because like I said, damp heat tend to be a little bit harder to deal with. And when it's manifesting a different area, it can have different manifestation. So in that case, I would usually recommend seeing a TCM practitioner first because acne and fatigue sounds like damp heat, but it could caused by other internal conditions too. So I don't want to give you a recommendation and then you go out there and then start drinking it and then find it unhelpful, because Chinese medicine is about holistically. We want to look at the big pictures. So there's not really a specific food or specific tea that I can recommend you right now, but definitely I can recommend you is your diet. Try to exercise as much as possible so your body is able to sweat out the excessive dampness and heat and help you detox first, and also avoid foods that are like, for example, like I said, greasy or more oily or sweet food that can further cause more dampness and heat accumulation in the body.
Excellent. So next question is, I sweat a lot when I sleep. What is wrong with my body? Should I consume more cool or cold food?
Usually sweating a lot indicating that there could be yin deficiency type underlying, but another sign of sweating at night, it could also be damp heat. So these two are very different in terms of one is being excess as damp heat, one is actually deficiency as the yin deficiency. So right now you can be having some cooling food, for example, the chrysanthemum goji berry tea. You can try that out first, and that can help you cool your body down before anything else.
Okay. I have another question here. Thank you, Royce. Out of curiosity, where does alcohol fall under in terms of its constitution?
What does it mean alcohol falls in terms of constitution? So alcohol in general, the nature of alcohol are mostly damp and heat together. So I'm not sure if that's the question that Henry is trying to ask, or
Maybe you can clarify that, Henry,
okay.
what it is you're asking. So yeah, that was it.
Okay. So usually alcohol are both damp and heat combined together.
Excellent, thank you. Also a question, what do you take for extreme dry throat and extreme sore throat?
So extreme sore throat and dryness, if this is a chronic problem, then we can think of it as a yin deficiency type because there's not enough body fluids to nourish the throat and causing the throat to be inflamed. But we should also consider if there is any external pathogen that's going on. For example, influenza. A lot of people experience sore throat at the beginning of influenza. If that's the case, we have to clear out the pathogens first before we start nourishing our body fluids. So in that case, I would actually recommend seeing like a TCM practitioner to make sure which type of it is and go before going into any specific kind of diet or any life changes. Oh, if it's influenza, so then it will be more acute. So influenza, chrysanthemum tea. I don't know if you guys noticed the chrysanthemum tea and mint tea. They both have the function of clearing wind heat. So wind heat are the kind of like the pathogen that invades into our body that can cause influenza-like symptoms. So right now you can be trying mint tea, and you can add a little bit of honey in it to give it a little more sweetening and then a little more nourishing function to help with the dryness and the soreness of the throat. But if you do find like if it's to a point that your throat is actually quite painful with swallowing or drinking water, it would be best to actually see a doctor or see a TCM practitioner.
Excellent, thank you. So another question here, what do you recommend for someone to take for who is experiencing depression and periodic anxiety?
Periodic anxiety, does that mean like,
yeah, expression and periodic anxiety.
Does that mean whenever they're having periods, they feel depressed and anxious, or is it just like it's based on time, they could be having anxiety or depression? It's not a constant thing.
Yeah, I believe what they're asking is just like periodic, not necessarily caused by a period, but periodic every now and then, the anxiety that might come up.
Okay, so
yeah, not menstruation related. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
So anxiety, depression, and can be really related to how we talk about qi stagnation. So that means the liver function may be impaired. the liver cannot control the free flow of energy in the body, causing your emotion to be fluctuating. So sometimes when the liver is able to push and move things around, you're feeling a little bit more anxious. But whenever there's too much stagnation going on, your body will actually go into like a depressed kind of feeling. So definitely I will look into helping strengthening your liver function first. And we can see, for example, chrysanthemum tea are really good, or some foods that are more sour taste in nature, or mint tea that could actually help your body to get the energy moving. And another one is exercising. So exercising can help, again, help movement of the energy in the body. So you can try that out first.
Excellent. Okay, so just being mindful of the time, we have here Royce, so maybe we can have time for one last question in the chat box. If someone wants to send a question in, that would be great. I still have some information to pass on to you before we close up. So any more questions? Okay, so Royce, that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was so informative and enlightening. I appreciated so much, all of that. So I do hope that each and every one of you will have gained a better understanding of your constitution and how best to make the most of the food that you eat. I know certainly I did, and I'll really be looking at my food quite differently from this point on. So just before we close, we do have a little request for you. We will be sending out a quick 1-minute survey on tonight's webinar, and I would greatly appreciate your input. So this will allow us to improve our content and process for future webinars. So we'd really appreciate that. Please look out for that in your email. And on another important note, if you or someone you know are in need of medical attention, we are currently providing online consultation and treatment through herbal prescription for general conditions and in-person acupuncture treatments for urgent cases or acute flare-ups. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you would like to inquire about our services. Visit our website for more information, mycompletebalance.com. And for next week's webinar, backed by popular demand, Ambrose Tai, our psychotherapist, will be presenting Digging Our Heels Out, Understanding Marital and Relational Dynamics in Times of Tension and Conflict. So this webinar next week will offer a more in-depth approach to some of the topics touched upon during the April 16th webinar, deepening understanding and providing participants with practical tools to implement in their lives. So this is such an important and timely and much needed resource given, everything that we're dealing with right now. We really hope you'll join us, and we look forward to seeing you there. Details and registration for this webinar will be available on our website, mycompletebalance.com. So in closing, once again, everyone, thank you so much. Thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening and for your commitment to your own health and well-being. So important. So from all of us at My Complete Balance, please, please, please stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, we are all in this together. So take care, everyone. Have a great night, and thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Royce. That was amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming.
Okay.
Just a quick note, I saw somebody ask about if they can get a copy of presentation in the email. Do you know anything about that, Ross?
Not offhand, but I will check with Esther. We'll figure that out. I don't know the answer offhand. I'm sorry.
I believe on our website, if you go under the webinar section, there should be the videos of tonight, and you can look into that area. If not, then we will definitely try to send you a link to your email to make sure everybody get a copy.
Hi, everyone. All the videos will be sent out to all the participants for today. So the recordings will be sent out probably tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you, Esther. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.